All right, all right. Try that out. Okay, welcome to the IP address tonight. Super happy about this interview. This gentleman that I'm about to bring on is named Dee Madden. Now, Dee and I go back, oh my gosh, 25 or more years ago. And we were label mates on Cleopatra Records back when I was in Usher House and living in Chicago and doing the touring thing and the full on music thing. And Dee was in a band called Penal Colony on Cleopatra, and there was a lot of similarities between the two bands, but there was also some good camaraderie that's persisted over the years. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Dee on here and say hello. How you doing, man?
What's up? Doing good, man. Doing good. I got a haircut.
Look at you with the haircut. You were
I got a
always
haircut, Ivan. I can't talk about it enough. I feel like a new man.
well. I remember back in the day, and I think we'll have some pictures. There's some times when you were GQ smooth, man. There's no doubt about it. You had the high and tight. Uh,
Yeah, maybe.
I remember.
Sure.
I remember you were always you always had it. Look, so kind of just to talk about a little bit, just right off the bat. So we last time I saw you was probably 93 or 94. I think we were
Yeah.
playing, it was around Halloween. We were playing Usher.
Oh, right. That show. Oh, where was that?
It was,
Jason. Yeah. So you guys were opening for Dave Vanian's Ghost Train.
right. No, it was Dave Vanian. It was God, Phantom Chords.
Phantom Chords. Phantom Chords. Yeah, Jason and I went to see you go see you guys play. That was the last time. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and it
mean,
was
I've
at a
seen
strip
Robert.
mall. It was in like a strip mall or something.
It's like, yeah, where? Oh gosh, I wish Jason was here right now. I think it was at like Gallagher's in Huntington Beach or something like that. It was like somewhere in Orange County.
It
It seems like
that
it
was
was
now.
some
What did Jason play? Jason played, and
drums.
Andy played guitar. Jason played drums, and Jason
Yeah,
was a maniac. I'm just gonna say
I'm
Jason
not.
was a. I remember that show particular because he was right in the front row. I got to share this story because this is
Yes,
funny.
yes.
So, this is a memory of mine that I will till the day I die.
Oh, I have a story about this too. I was
So
thinking about this.
Jason for you guys that don't know was the drummer for Penal Colony, and Jason was he really was a nut job, but he was an amazing drummer. And I gotta
Still is.
say,
Still is.
he he could
He
play
plays in the band now with Chris.
really
He's still a great drummer. Yeah,
well.
I talk to him all the time.
I mean, honestly, between the electronics and his drumming, that was, I mean, not to take away from Andy, because we'll talk about Andy in a bit, but he carried a lot of the sound, and Robert
Yeah.
and I, the drummer, Robert's the drummer from Usher House. And so
Mhm.
Robert and I had many conversations about Jason, but Jason had been heckling me all night, man. And so he
Was
was,
he?
yeah, well, not in a bad way, not in a bad way, but he
Right.
was
Right.
right
He
up,
was just giving you crap.
yeah, just friendly grief, man.
Oh
Nothing
my
bad.
God.
Nothing but love for
Yeah.
Jason. And he was standing like right in the front row, like right on the stage. And the
I think
stage,
I was standing right next to him.
well, then I'm going to apologize because the stage was about yay high. His face
Yep.
was about, and it was packed. It was packed. There was a ton of people there. It was either right before Halloween or on Halloween. And
Was it? Okay.
I had taken a mouthful of beer and I'd snuck up like I'm playing guitar, and I'd literally get right on my knees, and Jason is facing back. He's not even facing the stage.
Yeah.
And he turns around, and right when he turns around, I just completely unload this mouth of beer right in his face. and I mean, I mean, everybody was clapping and applauding, and it was
Yeah.
it was so funny. But he, man, and in Jason form, man, he took it right in stride. And I remember giving him a hug after the show. It was just it was funny. And I think I've shared that story a few times over the years. But it was a good time. It was a really good time.
That's Jason. That's Jason, man.
Now, what was your?
Jason's
You said you had
beautiful.
something to add to that, or
Oh yeah, so the thing that I remember from that show was I can't remember if it was before or after you guys played, but you guys invited us back to backstage, whatever the backstage
sure,
was. And I think it was just like behind the stage. It was just like a curtain behind the stage or something like that. And
yeah,
we sat on some couches, and there was a bucket of beers, and you and Rob were like, "Oh, help yourself." I went, "Okay, cool." And then so Jason and I both got beers, and we were talking to you, and I think we both finished our beers about the same time. Right about then, Dave Vanian walks in, and as we're walking over, so like he's walking in from the side, and we're walking towards the bucket to get more beers, and we look up and go, "Hey man, how's it going?" And he looked at us and gave us the shittiest look. Can I cuss? Is that all right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
He gave us the shittiest look, I'll never forget it. I looked at him, and he didn't say anything. As I was picking the beer up out of the bucket, he just looked at me and went, I go, "All right, nice to meet you, bro." And then I walked back over to the couch and sat down, and we just kept drinking, and then we kind of looked at you like, what just happened? And then I think Rob was like, he's just kind of pissed off that you're dipping into the beers.
Which
And I
was
think you guys actually had to make nice with him. Like you had to walk over there and go, "Look, man, we're not," because you guys, I don't think you guys were drinking at the
yeah.
time.
Robert
You
and
were drinking
I,
at that time.
Robert
You
and Bob
said,
and I didn't drink
I think
on the
one of
road.
you or Rob even said, "We're not drinking. Just go ahead and drink our beers."
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what we
And he
said.
didn't know. He didn't know. Like, and so so here we are. We're dipping into the beer, and that's all he did. He didn't say a word. He just made that noise.
That was that was the last show of the tour. I'm almost
Was it?
positive. And we had started in New York and we ended in LA, and he was over it. I could tell he was over it, and which was fine. He'd actually been pretty pleasant, but the rest of the band, oh my gosh, the rest of the band were the nicest guys.
Were
I don't
they?
have it on my wall, but like I remember, like right when we're like they're done, the bass player, walks off the stage and just goes here. They were going to fly back to England, and he had this Fender P bass, and he just here, take this, and he gave me his Fender P bass, and I use it all the
What?
time. Yeah, yeah, just handed it
What?
to us. Just the nicest guys, but
Wow.
but you guys were super nice too, and we never actually got to play with you, right? I had to call Rob on that one and kind of say,
No,
do we
no,
play
we did shows with you. We definitely did a show with you guys at Spanky's.
at
We
Spanky's?
for sure did a show with you guys. Like it's, God, I wish Jason. I keep saying I wish the other guys were here, but I know from because we're all still close. The four of us are all pretty tight, and I've learned over time that I'm the only one out of the three of us that really remembers the most. So I keep saying I wish Jason was here, but I know if Jason was here, like I don't know. We for sure played with you guys. We for sure played with you guys somewhere in the Inland Empire, and I'm pretty sure it was
I
Spanky's.
remember Spanky's.
I think
I thought we had seen you guys play at a show, and you know what? We're talking about this stuff. I want to play a song like right off the bat. Let me play a Penal Colony song.
okay.
Well, let me put up a picture first. Let me put this picture up and kind of go
Oh,
through who everybody is. So let me do this. Turn this loop thing off. Who are we looking at right here?
nah. So this was the last lineup before things kind of disintegrated. In the upper left, that's Jason in the upper left,
Okay,
and the top middle, that's Chris. That's Chris. He was the bass player.
right,
Now Jason and Chris still play together. They play in a band together called the Cornfed Project. They still play together.
cool.
The guy on the right is Dean. Oh, I can't remember Dean's last name.
And I don't
Uh,
remember him. I don't remember you guys being a five
friend
piece.
Dean. Yeah, so Dean played. He was playing keyboards in Hate Department for a little while. He was
Okay,
just like a guy that we knew from the scene in the Inland Empire. And somehow we found out that we could use him for keyboards. We wanted to get an integrated keyboard player because we were doing more stuff with synthesizers.
Okay.
So he played like one or two shows with us. And then on the bottom row of that picture is bottom left is Andy. He was a guitar player, and then that's me, bottom center.
Look at you. Like I said, you guys were all totally GQ smooth. And
Oh no, dude, we were freaks at that point. We were like I wanted to use that. Someone gave me those pictures. Like I took those pictures to use for we did so Five Man Job was one of those ECDs. We did it in that ECD format, and uh, Brian McNellis and I did all of the director interactive content, and I was trying to take pictures to use for content for it.
sure.
And that's what those were. And like a friend of mine had them, and he gave those to me like a couple years ago, recently.
Well, let me play a little bit of Blue Nine on your official YouTube. This is the official thing. We were talking about this yesterday. My none of my bands have ever had the word official in any of their titles on YouTube, so I am sorely slacking. So I want to play this.
So
This is a
I want to
great.
tell you about this real quick. This was directed by David Glass, who was the bass player of Mephisto Waltz.
Oh wow,
Yeah, David
that is
Glass
cool.
and another guy um, worked on that, and I think our friend Patty shot that footage at Club Lingerie. But David Glass worked on that video, and then he also worked on the Freemasons video too. But
Oh, perfect. Well, let me play this, and it may give me some ads because it's a YouTube video. I'll try to cycle through that. So let me try to see how this does. Here we go.
Understand the reality of the frame and the need to pull in all that exists. Chew it, listen to the world's hum and the serial killers that are dead. Stay alive for the colors that have no name. Circumvent, breathe in the sulfates. Just the threshold, the envelope of pain. Blue nine, pulling me down again. Blue
Yeah. Hell yeah,
sure,
man. And that
sure.
that
I wish
song.
I still had that guy's. I still wish I was that skinny.
Well, yeah. Well,
Yeah, I don't really look like that guy anymore.
that song, there's no way you would know this, but that song has been on just about every. Speaking of skinny, every exercise and run tape I've had for just about the past 20 years.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just awesome. That's an awesome song. And I'm going to kind of pick favorites here, but when Andy kicks in on that chorus, I'm just like, yeah. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
it's just
Andy,
awesome.
Andy had such good. He had the weirdest fucking guitar setup, but he got such good tone out of that. Him and I have talked about that many times in recent years. He had this crazy setup where he had like a 2x12 combo, but like he was only using the head on it, and then he had it connected to an external speaker, and then he had some pedals, and he had like a Boss ME5, and he was doing like gain staging with his tone and stuff. It was a crazy setup. It was just like one of those things where he looked at it and went, "All right," but it sounded amazing. They
No, it
always sounded
did.
amazing.
It did. And all of you guys sounded amazing. So normally I'll just kind of put this out there. When I do these interviews, we do a connection the day before just to kind of test stuff out. And you and I kind of spoke about this yesterday, the whole being in the studio thing. Now, you have kind of said to me that some of these mixes were a little electronic heavy in your mind. Is that what you were where you were heading, or not electronic enough, or
Oh, well, that came later, Ivan. I was talking about what the whole five-man job saga.
gotcha. Because
So what I was saying is we started to write new material after Put Your Hands Down, after the first album that song from that video was on, and we really felt like we were beginning to find our voice, like we were beginning to find we started we started dabbling with sample drums and samples and stuff, and we were still trying to figure out we were still trying to figure out what we wanted to be when we grew up. And after we got that first album done, we were playing like crazy. We were playing out live all the time, and we were starting to write again. And I think with that first that first handful of songs that we wrote and worked on, after the stuff that became most of Five Man Job, like we really began to start to find our voice and how we wanted to use electronics and sampling. And so we went off and recorded some stuff, and we felt really good about it. Now all the while, Cleopatra was coming to us and going, "Well, you're going to do the first album was great, but you're going to do more stuff with electronics, right?" And like in our minds, we were like, "Well, yeah. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff with sampling and stuff.
right,
I mean, so yeah, of course." So we went off and did that, and I think we submitted. The first crack we took at that of recording those songs, and they were like, "Yeah, this isn't electronic enough." I'm like, what does that mean?" Like it's like Jason did all this crazy stuff with sampling. Like Jason just evolved into like this evil genius. Yeah, I've been doing this Bands of Brethren thing, these little posts on the Penal Colony fan page, where I've kind of been using it as an excuse to try to help reassess our legacy as a band, and try to help people understand where we were really coming from, and that we really weren't. We really don't want to be as much as the Frontline Assembly remixes were great. They were really good. They did a good job with them, but they didn't really represent who we were. And so I had this idea to start doing these posts to try to correct that a little bit.
sure. No, I get that.
One of the things that I noticed over the years, just listening to what other people did, is that this hip hop artist, Jay Dilla, who's a really famous beat maker and hip hop artist.
Okay,
He was on Stone Throw. His MPC, the MPC drum machine that he uses in the Smithsonian now.
wow,
He had this whole technique of deliberately not quantizing things. And Jason would do shit like that. Like Jason would do stuff with loops, like he would just be like, I don't know if it was intentional enough. We never really talked about it, but like he would take samples and not line them up exactly right. Like he would let them be kind of loose and sloppy, and it always worked. It just sounded like it was never things that I like. He would do things and I would just think, well, I would never think to do that.
right.
And so we were doing all these really cool things, and we just kept getting, yeah, it's not electronic enough. And we were like, what does that mean? Okay. So we went, by that time we were out of money for the five-man job stuff. They gave us a little bit of money to record. We ran out of money, and we ended up re-recording everything on my 4-track, and then just using track 4, striping track 4 to empty, and then sequencing as much as we could.
Sure.
And adding keyboards that way, and some of that stuff made it onto like the Zothamog, one of the Zothamog releases or something like that. But they still didn't. They were still not. They just kept going, not electronic enough.
Well, that was kind of back then. I remember when we got approached, the Brian Pereira, and for those you don't know, Brian Pereira is the guy that started Cleopatra Records, and he had basically sent this. Gosh, for the life of me, I can't remember her name, but she was a writer uh, and lived in Chicago, and he had kind of was friends with her and was like, I'm looking for a certain type of sound. And so Brian was very focused on, it seemed to me, like a certain kind of sound. Like he was definitely like, this is what he wanted. I do remember him saying stuff about electronics. And that was kind of, I think at the time, of course, now look at what they're doing. They do everything. But
Yeah,
I mean, you guys were signed to Cleopatra right after us, like within months or right
I
around the
think
time.
so. I think like you guys and us were like the first two bands, active bands.
Actually,
Like
there was one before us. Oh my gosh! Now I wish
he,
Rob was here.
he always told us
Spawn
that
Ranch.
he
Spawn
always,
Ranch.
was Spawn Ranch before us. I didn't
Yes,
because
yes.
they
By
okay,
like, and then
okay,
it was like Brian had released a bunch of catalog stuff. That was their bread and butter. He was releasing all these
yep.
old catalogs on CD, like Sid Barrett stuff like that.
Sid Barrett, Blitz.
Yeah,
He had some craft. He had some Kraftwerk catalog. He was making the bulk of his money off of some Kraftwerk stuff that he got. He managed to get the
right.
license to re-release.
I think about 6 or 7 old school bands that he had somehow gotten a hold of those licensing deals. And I'm almost positive Spawn Ranch was before us. And then I think it was us and then you guys. So we were like literally, if there was a Cleopatra Hall of Fame, I think we're in the top 5 first live, like you say, active
Oh
working
yeah,
bands.
yeah. I mean, he told us that. He told us that too at
Yeah.
the time.
And so he was, I'm sure again, he was, coming from a new label kind of thing. I'm sure he had his definite thing and all that, but he definitely,
Well, yeah, I mean, look, it's his label. I mean,
sure.
he definitely had vision for how he saw artists that were on his label. I mean, you can't really fault him for that.
No. And we never
He did
did.
have very definite ideas. It's just unfortunate that we were beginning to have very definite ideas about who we were. I mean, for us, and by the time he started giving us notes like that, and it became a rub, and it's unfortunate how things worked out. But I mean, he does have vision. He does have a good ear for stuff, um, and it just kind of worked out that what he wanted and what we did just weren't the same thing.
What was it
You know,
like for you? I've always wondered this. I've had a few conversations about this, but it's been a while. You guys were LA based,
yes,
which is where Cleopatra was. We were Chicago based, or I was, Usher House was Chicago based, but you guys were LA based. I always felt like that LA treated its local bands like crap. I just really kind of felt like it was the whole, like, I don't know, not necessarily pay to play, but which was big back then, but just I kind of felt like it was, like a lot harder for local bands. Now we had some really good shows in LA. We had some really big shows. We played at the Roxy and stuff like that, and that was all nice. And I think we were treated really well. And like I think we played with Roz Williams once and some of those
yeah, you
guys.
guys got to play some cool shows.
But it was like, I just always, what was it like being a local band in LA? What was that all about?
The well, so the thing that you're talking about, the first thing that you're talking about really applied more to the clubs themselves.
Right. That's what I mean. I mean the
Club,
clubs.
there's a culture that existed specifically really Hollywood clubs. There was a culture. It was really kind of a cultural thing with promoters and club owners, and that I think still exists with some of the clubs there now. That they were doing you a favor by letting you play at their club, and then that would extend into it was never there was never any discussion about getting part of the door. There was never any discussion about even getting paid most of the time. And it was often pay to play. The whiskey was primarily a pay to play place, pay to play club. There were a few other clubs in town that did that, and a lot of that evolved from. I was just talking to my son about this a couple days ago. A lot of that evolved from just this flood of hair bands that came in the wake of Poison and Motley
Sure.
Crue
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
mid-'80s. So Motley Crue just owned the strip. They really just owned the strip. I mean, you can go out on the internet and find pictures of that period of time where they just basically had a residency, I think, at the Whiskey, and people were just queued up, like wrapped around the block every night to see them play. They were the only thing like that at the time. It was all kind of like punk bands and sloppy gun club type rock bands,
Right.
that were around. And they came along, and they came along. Their timing was perfect because Motorhead kind of made a bit of a comeback. They came to town, and they played a huge show at the Palladium. They played a few nights at the Palladium, and a lot of punks went to that show. And I think there was just an overriding feeling in the punk scene at the time that people were just getting tired of getting beaten up by cops and just getting tired of going to hardcore shows,
Right.
and getting harassed by cops. And when they weren't getting harassed by cops, they were getting beat up by skinheads, because that's just what skinheads like to do.
Sure. Yeah.
And so people were just, the older contingent was just getting kind of fed up. So Motorhead comes along, and Motorhead's awesome because they play fast. That they really kind of had that punk vibe, which of course they did, because they're really kind of they're proto, right? I mean,
Right.
A lot of the stuff that happened after that couldn't have happened without them.
And they weren't glam by any stretch. They were ugly. They were rock and roll ugly.
Too. Now they were like dirty, grimy, long-haired punk rock guys. I mean,
Yeah.
to us, and so they did a string of really good shows. And then it just seemed like to me, just from memories, Motley Crue just kind of swooped in like right after that, and just started and set up shop at the Whiskey, and then just started playing every night. And then right after that, like this flood of all of these bands,
Guns N' Roses and all those guys,
trying to look like Poison and they all had some variation of Lizzie Borden, London,
right?
All these names like that. And there was just a flood of those bands, and the way the club promoters ended up dealing with it was to make them pay to play.
And
then that stuck.
And for people who don't know what that means, sometimes, I don't know if it still goes on or not, but back in the day, you would basically go to the club owner if they let you play, and there's a couple of ways it was done, but you essentially bought like a number of tickets. Or something to that effect. You may buy 100 tickets at the cost, and then you in turn would turn around and sell. That put the onus on you to get out there and sell the tickets, or give them away to your friends because you needed the bodies out there.
It depended on the club. Some clubs would just give you a stack of tickets and say, sell them, give them away. We don't really care.
Right.
You're giving us this much money, no matter what.
Right.
If you don't give that to us, then you're not going to play.
And I think that was pretty common. And were you raised in LA? Did you grow up in LA? Is that where you formed it?
I was born in Torrance. I lived all over Orange County and Lomita, all over Orange County and LA. I lived in Lomita for a while, lived in Hermosa Beach for a long time, just where Black Flag started.
And we're about the same age, right? I'm 54. We're pretty close to the same age.
I wish one of my kids were here. I just turned 56.
So you were back. That puts you like right in the middle of, and I can't wait to show some of these. I mean, that was, skateboarding, that LA hardcore stuff. I'm not saying that's what you listen to or fan, but LA hardcore.
It was. I mean, that's what got me going, man. That's totally what got me going. I was, I was just like every other kid in LA in 78, 79, just listening to the local rock station, going to Cal Jam, getting stoned and going to surf movies and stuff like that. And then a friend of my friend Tony, that this guy, one of the guys I used to skate with a lot, started a hardcore band with his cousin. And right around the same time, when I would go to stay with with my biological mother, who lived right on the beach in Hermosa Beach, the upside of visiting her was she was really close to a club in Redondo Beach called the Fleetwood,
Okay.
which was one of the first LA hardcore clubs. It's one of the first clubs where they started booking hardcore bands,
Okay.
and they would have these shows there that were like 7 or 8 bands, and it would be like Black Flag, Germs, Vicious Circle, who later became TSOL. We saw one of the first bands I ever saw was Vicious Circle, which was TSOL before they became TSOL. The Screws, the Chiefs, all these really cool bands. And I was there. I was staying at my biological mother's house with some friends, and they were like, "Hey, there's a bunch of hardcore bands playing at this place down the street. We should go." And so we went to those shows, and I was just blown away. I mean, it was just like one of those life-changing things, like I was 15, and saw these slam pits and these bands just doing all this crazy stuff. And it just completely changed my life, just changed my life. So I came back home, and then sometime shortly thereafter, my friend Tony had started a hardcore band with his cousin Dave, and they needed a bass player. And I had played bass, like in after school guitar bands, like at school and stuff. And like, he knew that I knew how to play bass, and he asked me if I wanted to play, and I said sure. And that was like the first proper band I was in when I was in a hardcore band.
Sure. I mean,
Totally invited.
it's kind of funny because I grew up on the Gulf Coast. I'm also from LA, Lower Alabama, and I had to throw that in there. Everybody from Alabama knows
Sure.
that joke, but the Gulf Coast, I think there was a lot of people that really looked to the West Coast for music. Skating was kind of a thing. Not so much surfing because there's just no waves on the Gulf of Mexico, not like in California. And there was a lot of the music, especially the hardcore, skate punk kind of stuff. I remember when the Suicidal Tendencies played in Pensacola, Florida, which had a big what do you call it, naval base. And
Oh yeah.
so you had all these Navy guys there, and I mean, and a lot of them were from the West Coast, and I mean that's
They
the
were
first,
into it.
yeah, like mosh pits and all that kind of stuff, and that's the
Oh,
first time I
sure.
saw all of that. But it was an interesting time, and knowing power chords and basic bass stuff and all that. I mean, I think I don't. You said you started in a hardcore band. My first band was basically, I wouldn't say hardcore, but we did Ramones versions of everything we did. Like every song
Cool.
we played it like it was the Ramones playing it. And then of course you
Nothing wrong with
grow
that.
as a musician. Yeah, it was cool, and it was a great base to build on. And then you end up getting in Penal Colony. You end up getting this record deal, and you get a little worldwide recognition.
Old juice.
It's not
Get that
like,
old juice.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you got I
Yeah.
mean, from you guys got like mail and stuff like that, and recognized
Oh
from,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
totally. Yeah, continued to for many years
yeah.
after we kind of disbanded. Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because, um, and I think you and I kind of touched on this yesterday a little bit, but like, I mean, for a while, after Usher House kind of fell apart, I didn't look at it. But then I go back later, and because the internet really kind of started right after, right before Usher House kind of dissolved. And then I'm looking up stuff, and you had mentioned this yesterday, like you're looking on, you see all this, like all these, Penal Colony songs, and they're on like compilations and
Oh yeah.
all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you're
I,
like,
I
people,
end up I've over the years I've kind of ended up being the reporter to the rest of the band about like, hey, you're not going to believe this. I'd always end up being the one that trips up. Like, we're on some kind of industrial workout CD. there's some kind of industrial workout CD around. Like, what is that?
Yeah, chains.
It's like a girl like wearing like black exercise fetish gear, and it's like, hey, do jumping jacks to Blue Nine.
I mean,
Like, it's just crazy.
let me play. I want to play another song, and yet again, you guys totally killing it. Yeah, another title with the word official in it. I'm gonna go back and rename a ton of YouTube videos tomorrow. I swear. Let me play this, and we'll talk about it on the other side. So here it comes. Let me get this going. It may give me ads, but
Uh-oh. Here we go. Here we go.
when did that come out? When did that come out? That was. Whoop, hold up. I lost your audio.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muting. Used to doing that at work. It was 94, I'm pretty sure. 94, 95.
Now, was this some of the material that you were saying they were asking for more electronics, or was
Yes.
this before? Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah. Funny story about that part. When we shot that video, we shot that assuming that we were gonna get to do the video for our version of that song that I sent you a mix of.
right.
And we shot that. We were lip syncing to our version of the song, thinking that that's the version we were going to get to use. And then it got shot and cut together. And Cleo came back to us and said, "Yeah, we really like the Frontline Assembly remix. We're just going to use that." And sync wise, it worked out because it was at the same tempo. So they dropped that in after
Let me
because it was electronic enough.
let me see if I can find. You said you did send that to me. I want to play a little bit of that if I have it. And what was the name of that song again?
Freemasons of Enochian Magic.
Freemasons of an Okeanos. Maybe you didn't send it to me. Let me see here.
Oh, I think I did. I hope I did.
It is not on.
I think I actually sent you both versions. I sent you a couple different versions.
You did. You did. So I'm going to play. One says FLA remix, and the other one says PC Penal Colony version. Let me play the Penal Colony version. Is that the one? Oh, let me play that.
That's the one.
Oh, let's play that a little bit. And hear the difference. Oh yeah.
Kings and queens on Vaseline, kill their child and crescent me. Lost in fact, open up the straight coat and
Yeah, I
The
totally
King of
hear
the Boys
that.
right there.
Yeah, that's a better version, man. That's
Oh, thanks.
that's a better
Thanks.
version.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's I get that now. I see where
Jason,
you're going.
Jason just Jason killed it with the beats on that. I mean, everybody did, but Jason did some really, really brilliant stuff on that little batch of stuff.
So what was it like? So after Penal Colony, kind of you guys went your own separate ways, but you guys stayed in touch. But then what was the next? Where did you go from there as a musician? What happened next?
Well, I would I will only say that that there was a period of wilderness years that existed. I'm not going to get too much deeper into it, but I descended into a pretty dark place for several years. Several
Did you,
years
did you
from
turn
like
any of that?
96. What's that?
Did you turn any of that into music? Did you turn any of that into
Later,
yeah?
yeah. I mean, like Unfinished Business, that Unfinished Business album. I sent you a few tracks off of that. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about on that is me coming back, uh, is sticking my head back up above water and
Sure.
kind of coming out of the darkness and trying to make sense of who I want to be when I grow up, I guess.
But isn't that kind of what
Um,
music does? I mean,
yeah,
from a and I'm we listen to different things for different reasons, but we play things and we write things kind of it's a little more raw, like raw nerves, meaning it's almost a form of self medicating in a way. I mean, it's
definitely,
you're letting stuff out. I
definitely.
mean, you can't keep it in. Um,
Yeah, that Unfinished Business album in particular, I think more than any other thing I've ever done, I was writing quite literally about a bunch of things that had happened to me from like 95 to 97.
and
Um,
did it help?
it did. Yeah, it did. I got some help. I started talking to people, and that helped quite a bit. And I started to learn that I had some conditions that I went through one of those things where I figured out around 40 that I had been living with a condition that I didn't know that I had from like age 5 or 6,
Okay.
and I was finally getting help for it. And that was right about the time I started working on that album, and it really helped free me up to to use music to talk about things that I wasn't talking about before, because it was a lot of it was just like, oh, I'm figuring this out about myself now. Um, this thing happened to me, and this thing happened to me, and it's okay though, because I'm kind of figuring out what's going on.
Do you think there was
So it
ever a
really helped.
time? Do you think there's ever a time like when people that experience that, like maybe you go through a number of years, and I kind of identify with what you're saying, um, where you don't acknowledge any of that stuff on any level, but it's that doesn't mean it's not there, and it comes out
Yeah.
in some way, either
Yes.
negative
Yeah.
interactions with people or some really
Yes.
kick-ass music or both, or and you're not even aware that it's a thing, especially when stuff that happens to us when we're so young, you just
Uh-huh.
normalize that. That's just not even,
Yes. And that was totally my situation.
yeah. I mean, that's
Absolutely. Because it was normalized, I didn't, there was a lot of things I just kind of took for granted as being the norm.
right.
And I got healthy. I moved to Portland, and I got a little healthier, and then I started working on it, and I started just learning a lot of things about myself. And the more I learned, the better I got, the healthier I got, and the more I understood what was going on with me, the better I was at managing it, and it just made everything better, And I was going through a lot of that when I worked on Unfinished Business.
When you look back on some of that early stuff, and you kind of like, where the music came from, where whatever came from, is it really obvious now to you what was going on, like how you were feeling and all these things that happened?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, Ivan, but like for me, I think a lot of times the same way that people have photo albums or they have objects of sentimental value, a wind up dancer or thing like that. They have totems that bring up good memories, good or bad. Um, I deliberately do things like that with music I write. I sort of use music in a way to work to work things out within myself, to get things out, and to try to convey things, try to reduce something to a message that hopefully someone else will relate to, and maybe find some solace in. But also, I drop totems in words that because they're like my photo albums. They're like
Sure.
my trinkets. I drop things in, and like when you play Freemasons, like there are certain things that I did or said, and I can remember thinking about that line, and like I remember where I was when I was thinking about that line, or when I came up with that idea, or when Jason came up with that idea, or when Andy came up with that guitar part, and there over time, the bad memories kind of wash away, and when you get older, you start to remember like the good stuff,
Right.
and that's music kind of does that for me. That's part of what drives me to do it. I want to capture a moment in time, a feeling that I might want to go back and experience again, or try to remember, like, oh yeah, I was doing
Sure.
that thing, or I was with my kid, or I was with my daughter. I was doing this thing with Hazel, and it does that for me.
I just watched this thing today, very coincidentally, and if you look on my Facebook page, check it out. It's about an hour. It's an actors roundtable thing, and it had like just a hodgepodge of people, like Tom Hanks, Jamie Foxx, Robert De Niro, Adam Driver, and I'm going to say his name wrong. I don't think I've ever said his name right. LaBeouf,
Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf.
Shia
So
LaBeouf.
they're going around. It's just talking. It's just discussion. It seems kind of random. And he basically comes out with this just like, I mean, just hard emotional response to a question. And because this movie he did where he writes about his father, but he
Yeah,
put,
Honey Boy. My
yeah.
daughter saw that. She said it was really, really good.
And
She liked it a lot.
so they asked him about that, and and he said, yeah, he goes, I wrote that because apparently he was, he said he was in a mental institution. He just got real honest about it. It was it was a wonderful thing to watch. And basically, out then he just starts like, I mean, waxing philosophical, man. He was like saying, he looks back on these things. And like with his dad, I guess he had this negative relationship with his dad, but he just said, you know what? I just switched it to instead of coming at him like a villain, I came at him with some empathy, which I can kind of identify with, things in my life. And maybe this is something that you can, relate to too, where basically now I'm looking back on things as an adult with a better understanding of the world. And I'm a little easier on people from the past
Yes,
that maybe I didn't have
absolutely.
the best relationship with, and I can come at it from a different way. And that's what he was saying. Come at it with, from the angle of love and not hate. And if you do
Yeah.
that,
Oh, I agree, man. I totally agree. I feel like age gives you many things. It gives you that wisdom, and I went through some pretty bad stuff for the first 30, 35 years of my life. But I feel like all of those things were gifts, because I wouldn't have made the album I just made if all of those things didn't happen. I wouldn't have done the things that I did with Chris and Andy and Jason if those
sure.
things hadn't happened. and I have those things now. I wouldn't be skateboarding with my son if those
Right.
things hadn't happened.
And I think that's the
So
key.
they define who I am, and I am definitely more in a place where I'm just kind of I'm just happy. I think I'm just happy to be alive, and I do consider a lot of the stuff that happened to me as gifts because I see um, how it helps me, how some of the things that I had to go through help me in life.
And that's a great, I think that's if each one of these things that I do, there seems to be a message. And I think that's the message, is that every thing that's happened to each of us, good or bad, if you have any kind of gratitude for where you are, which doesn't mean we can't strive to, continue to strive to be better. But if you have any gratitude for all the stuff that's going on in your life that's positive, you mentioned your son. I have a son, and he's, I mean, the best thing that ever happened to me. And good relationships, just a good positive experience. I know we're in the middle of this horrible COVID thing, and there's all kind of horrible things going on in the world, and it seems like we're trying to get the attic cleaned up, but it's getting messier before it gets better. But if you have any kind of appreciation for where you are, you have to acknowledge that you wouldn't be there if you didn't experience those negative things too.
Totally,
And
totally.
do you find that, like, I'll be honest with you, like it totally is reflected in my music. Like, I couldn't write a song if I wanted to, like I did back in the day. I'm not there. I couldn't do
Oh
it.
no, no, yeah, I like that stuff that you just put. I couldn't. I don't know that person.
Right.
I and I don't know. I don't think I would like that person very much, and I don't know that I would want to be around him for too long.
Well, I was around you a few
Um,
times, and you were always pretty cool.
oh, thanks, Ivan.
And that's one
I
thing that,
just yeah, no, but I definitely could not. I just don't. I don't scream in a mic anymore. I made the conscious decision like 10 years ago to really try to learn how to sing. Like that's just I just want to try to use my voice in a
sure.
melodic way now. Like I don't really I just because I just felt like it was time to. Like I don't want to I don't really feel the need to scream into the microphone until I'm 65 or anything.
Right. I don't
I
have the
mean,
energy for it.
I can't write I
I
can't
don't,
write stuff like that anymore.
yeah. I mean, it takes a lot.
I'm not
It
that guy.
it takes a lot out of you. A number of years ago, it's kind of funny. This probably happened about 4 or 5 years ago. I woke up one night and I was like, the next day, it just came to me at night. But the next day, I woke up and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to learn how to play the banjo. And she's like, what? I think you muted again, man. Um, but
Sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to mute because I can hear my daughter in the other room.
that's
Yeah,
okay.
I've seen the videos of you playing banjo. It's fucking great, man.
And
That's so cool.
but here's the funny thing about it. And this kind of goes to what we've been talking about. There was a couple of time we'd just moved to a city and just moved, and I've got a new job, and there's just tons of stress, and I started playing this banjo, and my wife and son immediately noticed that my mood would be better when I would play,
Of
and
course,
and
of course.
and they would come up to me sometimes ago, and I would just, apparently I would be in a funk or something, and my son or my wife, they both would
And
do
they
it.
would tell you to go play.
They would say, hey,
Yeah,
Dad, maybe you
yeah,
should go pick up the banjo for a few moments.
yeah. Hazel does that to me too. Hazel does like she can tell, like she knows. Like I get this, man. I get cranky. I get cranky if I don't get to create or I don't get to do something. Like sometimes we'll have an exchange and she'll look at me for a minute. She's just go in your room and go make me. Just go do something. Just go away because you're not very fun to be around right now.
I want to play
Yeah.
this video of you, and is this your son skating?
No.
Who is Gray?
Oh, that's my son. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to play a
Skate
couple of
stuff.
videos of you
Okay.
skating, because
Oh,
I think this is awesome. So here is you, and then I'm gonna play actually a couple of clips of you skating and
yeah.
then your son skating.
The younger guy is my son.
Let
He's
me.
the one that skates good.
I may put some music to this. Let's put some music. What would be a good one to play too?
Oh, I don't know. You pick.
I'm gonna go with.
I think I need some banjo music. That's what I think it
Oh, I
needs.
don't. You didn't send me any banjo music, so
Um,
let me just play this, and I think people will love it.
Whoa.
yeah, I sent you that one because that was about as good as I got. Um, I've gotten injured pretty badly a few times since I shot this, and I don't really try a lot of the things that I'm doing in this one run. I really just kind of pump around and grind once in a while. Um,
Well, I couldn't do it. There's just no way. Let me play this next clip.
and that's me.
Here we go.
Oh, yeah. So this was a really cool indoor park that we had in Portland. And they kept the bowl open for a while after the plaza part, the three part shut down. And this was a few years ago.
Well, you're killing it, and this is Gray. This is your son. Let me
Yeah,
load this up.
he's the one that knows how to skate.
I love this. This
That,
is great.
yeah, he's 31 now, man, and we've been talking about it. I feel like he's better now than he was as a teenager. He's trying things and he's doing things that he couldn't do back then. But that's him on the tombstone. That's a park that him and I go to all the time. This is my friend Melissa's backyard. She has a skate park in her backyard.
That's awesome.
And that's Greg doing a tail block. That's me hooting.
I like how I was backside. I'm always
It's
like
it's
front-
definitely it's one of the biggest joys of my life. Just the fact that I am at the age I'm at and I can still skate and that we get to skate together.
No, that's
It's a
cool.
great thing.
I have a nephew, and his name is Nash, and his dad has hooked him up with a guy that's teaching him how to skate. He's probably about 9 or 10, and when we go to see him in Atlanta, they have a nice skate park there, and I'm watching him and other guys skate, and it looks the same. I mean, people are still doing it, and it's cool that people are continuing to do this, and he's launching himself off the sides of these bowls and stuff like that. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, no freaking way. I would just be dead. I would just end up in the hospital with a broken ankle or
No.
something like that. Yeah, dude,
It's
I
all,
hate.
it's all about learning how to fall. I think I actually got better in some aspects. So I skated a lot as a kid from like 5 until I was 16, and I stopped when I was 16 when I started playing in bands, and I didn't pick it up again until we moved up here. Like I didn't skate for like 15, 20 years or something like that. I picked it up again in my mid 30s. And the thing that I learned that I began to focus on as an older person picking it up again was learning how to fall. I didn't know how to fall when I was a kid. I broke bones quite a few times because I didn't know how to fall, and figured out pretty quickly that's really the key. Once you kind of know how to fall, then it gets easier to drop in on the gnarly stuff. But
That's
that's 90% of it.
that's and I'm just thrilled to death that you're still doing it. Any time that I see people still doing anything like that, I think there was a time, and maybe your experience is different, but to me, I don't remember there being anybody in their 40s and 50s doing cool things. That sounds ugly,
Yeah,
but I just
no,
they were a little more stuffy is not the right word, and it's just going to come off as being mean. But I just kind of feel like
that's true. There was definitely like when I was a kid in the '60s and the '70s, there was an archetype of the male who was 40 or like 40 or more. Like it very much the person you're thinking of. It's the same kind of person I'm thinking of. Like when I think of those guys, even that age, like they always seemed like they were 60.
yeah.
Like
And
they
there's
didn't. And then I became 40, and I remember thinking about stuff like that. I'm like, well, I don't feel like those guys. I don't know.
I know, and it shows. I think it shows because where I live here in Lawrence, there's a ton of bands that have people in their late 50s, 60s, early 60s, and they're still out there and they're killing it.
Great. That's
and
great.
and they're out there, they're lugging gear around, they're playing, and they're completely comfortable in their own skin, and they're playing great music, and they're playing it well, as they should, because they've been playing forever. But and I love that, and I don't have any recollection of that growing up. Like, I don't have any memory of old people in bands, except if they were in big bands or jazz bands, or things like that.
Yeah. When I was a kid, there was there was this horrible band that you would get subjected to. Like, they played like every county fair and every like big surf contest / party. There was this band called Papa Do Run Run. And it was just the worst collection of old people just making the worst. Like, just imagine like the worst approximation of 50s rock and roll, or like surf music, and it was just bad. It was just really bad.
But looking back at them now, you're kind of like, hey, at least they're doing it. I mean,
No,
no, not
no.
no credit.
I am more impressed by, like the Keith Morrises of the world and the Jello Biafras that
Sure, yeah.
are like well over 60. Iggy, I went and saw, Hazel and I went to see Iggy do that little post-pop depression tour when he did that album with the guys from Queens of the Stone Age.
Sure.
I mean, he's 70. He was like 73.
Yeah.
When he did
all,
that. That's fucking cool.
All the
cool.
guys, all the bands that I like,
cool.
all the bands, just about all the bands that I like, assuming that nobody's passed away, there's some measure of them still doing it. I think Peter Murphy's still doing it. I think even the Love and Rockets guys are still doing it. The only band that
we went to see Tones. They did Tones on Tail, so they did a little tour. Daniel and what's the drummer's name?
Kevin.
Kevin. It was Daniel and Kevin, and Kevin's daughter playing bass.
Oh wow!
And they did nothing but a bunch of old Tones on Tail stuff, and it was great.
See, that would be really awesome. I'm gonna play another song. This is from later on. This is a live performance of you. It looks like a duo kind of thing. You're playing and singing, and there's somebody playing keys. I'm going to start this kind of in the middle. So let me play this, and
this might be new stuff. We'll see.
All right, let's see here.
Oh yeah. So yeah, this is me and my friend Jessica. This is us performing the album I just put out last year.
I think this sounds great.
Us playing stuff off an Island in Israel. This is playing a song called The Billy Club Puppet. It's off that album. We played the entire album as a performance. We recorded every song on the album and played it in track order. And I got on a video and I recorded it too, and I put out a live album. That's my friend Jessica. She's great. I've been doing a lot of stuff with her. I played bass in a band I played drums in for a while. And when I went back to working on solo stuff again, I asked if she wanted to get involved, and she did, and she's been great. She's like a real musician. She knows how to like read music and stuff.
Right on.
She knows how to do stuff that I don't know how to do. And like, she's super, super good at like finding counter harmonies to things. Like I'll sing something and go, can you just do something here? Like, I don't even have to like say, can you do like sing a fifth or a third? I'll just say, maybe do something a third above. And she always find like these great like counter melodies. And she's one of those people that can just find really pretty things to do just off the top of her head.
Well, it sounds really good, right. and I love watching that again. Just the whole that there's still forward motion, and there's still some creativity going on. But like we kind of touched on earlier, it is certainly a different vibe and feel from, before. And which is, it is what it is. But I think it really sounds good. I'm going to play another clip, kind of not doing this in any kind of order here. I like this one.
All
I'll be
right.
honest with you because of your hair. So
Yeah.
let's, here it comes. Here it comes.
Uh-oh. Yeah, so this was the video for Unfinished Business, the title track off of the Penal Colony record that I did after I moved up here. This was one of the songs off that album I was talking about earlier,
Okay.
where I was coming out of my wilderness here. That's my son skateboarding. That's my son impersonating in the monk outfit. And we shot this all around downtown. Got that through the police station and me.
Walk away, you can never believe that. Hey!
This is a lot of fun. I did all the editing myself. Right when digital cameras started becoming a thing, and I got a camera for my son that could shoot in 24p, and we were just experimenting a lot with that, and it was a lot of fun.
I mean, that's, and how was that? How is, you have a son and a daughter, is that right?
Yes.
And does she do anything musical at all, or does she creative, or they do creative stuff, or are they just on their own path?
She is a voracious reader. She played violin for a little bit when she was younger, but she just loves reading, and she loves writing, and she just likes to read.
And that's awesome.
That's her thing.
That's a good thing to have. And your son,
She likes to have a stack of books and just sit on her bed and just read tons of books.
now I know your son's older. Is he in Portland with you, or where is he now?
Yeah, he lives right down the street. It's pretty great. They both live pretty close to me. My daughter actually just moved a little bit closer. She lives in 2 miles away in Northeast Portland, and my son lives right down the street. He just lives a couple miles away.
That's awesome. God, I haven't been to Portland since it was probably around the time that we did that last tour. I remember.
Did you guys play there?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you?
Did we play there more than once? I think we played there at least once. They put us, if I'm not confabulating my shows, we played with some Reverend Horton Heat kind of band, and as I recall, and they were pretty good. I don't remember the place.
There was a band that was around at that time called Royal Crown Review that was kind of like Reverend Horton Heat.
I'll have to ask Rob where it was. He has way
Rob's gonna know.
he has way better memory of stuff like that.
I know. He's another one of those guys that remembers stuff that no one else remembers.
So what's next? What's next for you? There's some ambient music that you're doing. Let me play.
Yeah. So I've been chipping away on some other stuff with Jessica. That's more guitar based. I'm definitely fixing to do something a little more guitar based. I just finished an album of ambient music called Comb that I just put out a couple days ago, and it's pretty crazy. I just have it on Bandcamp right now. It's not up on Spotify and Apple Music yet, but the response has been kind of wild because it was one of those things I'd wanted to do for a long time, and when I did it, I got it down pretty quick. I knocked it out pretty quickly, and people like it. People are really responding to it. It's pretty amazing.
Now, is this track, when this is over, is that some of the material?
Yes, that's one of the ambient tracks.
Let me play this a little bit, and we'll talk more about it on the other side. So hold on just a second.
I wasn't even going to talk. You already know I wasn't even going to talk about it. And then I talked to you, and then Rob texted me. He was like, "You can tell him about the album." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't know it."
Yeah. He texted
Rob
me.
was like, you got to make him talk about it. You got to make him
Yeah,
talk about it.
he and that's Rob
Okay,
all
okay.
over. Let me see. Let me get this up and running here.
So this was all stuff done very Brian Eno style. I was just setting up ways to do generative notes and play some notes, worked out ways to randomly generate them, and then I did a un-Eno thing and to do some manual playing over the top. But yeah, it was just a couple keyboards, and I've loved Eno's ambient series and his history music series for years, and I've just always wanted to do something like that.
And you record all of this at home, right? You have a studio that you use at the house.
Yeah,
Like
I'm
with,
in it. I'm in it. Here's my keyboards.
dude,
So those are the keyboards that I use for that stuff you just heard. Those right there.
that is a
The
righteous
drum
setup
level
there.
right there, and then there's pedals, other stuff right there.
So you're
Too
playing
much
this.
stuff.
This seems more than like you're playing. You're recording the actual tones of the keyboards, then, right? This isn't MIDI stuff triggering samples, or is it both?
So I've been using a hardware sequencer. So Arturia has been making these really, really cool hardware sequencers that I really like. I did a bunch of experimenting with um, non-software based things over the past couple of years, and the stuff that I've really been gravitating to sequencer wise is the Arturia. They make this thing called the BeatStep Pro, and they just came out with this thing called the KeyStep Pro. And it's a hardware sequencer that it can also work as a MIDI controller. And it just does all these great things where you can play things into it, and it'll randomize them. It'll randomize what you play. It'll randomize when the notes play. It's all very very much like stuff Eno would do with discrete music. Only
Sure.
he was doing it with tapes. But yeah, it's MIDI. There's MIDI is definitely involved. That I usually set up the generative stuff from the KeyStep Pro using MIDI, and then I just track it. And then some of that stuff I just turned it on and tracked everything live. The manual stuff that I was playing, and then the stuff that was generative.
That's and see that's
It's all in the pack.
it seems like I'm talking to more and more musicians that are doing that. That are whereas me, I'm all like MIDI triggering an E sampler. That's or a virtual instrument. That's all I know to do.
What's wrong
But
with that, man?
I think well sometimes I think you lose something. I think some of those hardware instruments are a little beefier somehow, and maybe that's just me being nostalgic. But
No, it's I didn't, so I went whole hog with software-based synthesizers in the early 2000s, and I ended up selling off all my gear. And then I spent about 10 years working on all this mimeograph stuff, some of which I sent you. And so it was 10 years of just like learning how to play upright bass again, learning how to play an accordion. Like it was, I just made an excuse to learn how to play new instruments. But they were all acoustic. When I was working on all that stuff, there's a couple of good synthesizer shops in Portland that I would wander into, and I would see like the new Dave Smith stuff coming out. Like Dave Smith, started his company back up, and then he started making like really cool stuff. And then Roland started making stuff again, and Moog started making some nice usable stuff. And I would go in and check it out, and had always kept in the back of my mind, I'd like to make an electronic music album again, but I'd like to see what it's like to work with hardware again. And the two things the two epiphanies I had with the first bit of gear that I bought was, oh right, tactile knobs, definitely that experience is very different. It's very different than interacting with a
Yeah.
soft synth on the screen. Even if the soft synth is connected to a MIDI controller, it's still not not really the same thing. And I've heard, when the Arturias and the Native Instruments of the world, come out with their Prophet 5 emulation or their GX8P emulation, and they do the side by side stuff. And yes, it
Right.
sounds pretty close, but when you're sitting there with a piece of hardware, there's something about the act of the audio traveling out of it through copper into an input, into an audio interface. It does something different. There's just something different about what happens, I think.
Well, and there is, and I think
It's those two things. And once I had those things, it definitely it very much changed the way that I worked.
I think what to me what you're talking about is feel. There's a big
Yeah.
discussion going on these days with guitar and modeled guitar versus mic'd up amps in the room and those kind of things. And I think, in my opinion, that you record something, it goes through a process. You're going to EQ it. You're going to affect it. It's going to be in a mix. It's going to be bounced down. It's going to be mastered. It's going to be resampled. Eventually, it's going to be listened on who knows what device, but
Yeah.
nothing near the caliber of what you're listening to when you record it. And so I think for people listening to it, it's good. Hopefully you did the right job. But when you're playing it, if it doesn't have the feel, there's no inspiration. It's just it can be a little colder or a little more sterile. But there are people
Yeah,
that,
I mean, I mean, as people like us, making stuff and being content creators and writing music, we have to get something out of it too, right? I mean, we need to be able to uh, have a good experience making it.
no,
Um,
agreed.
and for me, once I started getting back into hardware, it just changed the experience for me. It just made it. It made it into something that I began to look forward into to doing.
And I think that's really cool that that whole discussion of in the box or out of the box. And for people that are not sure what that means, some music is completely made within a certain set of software, and then some people are recording things outside of their computer. And we go back and forth over which is best. I'm currently I'm in the box all the way. I'm 100% in the box. I might amp up a guitar, but I haven't amped up a guitar or mic'd up a guitar in a long time. I
Yeah, I
tend to
don't
do
either. I use speaker emulated pedals.
yeah,
It's just
and
easier,
it is
and the
easier.
speaker emulation technology's gotten really good. You
It
know,
has, and honestly, like I said, at the end of the day, for me, I've got a limited amount of space. I've got a limited amount of money, and nobody knows the difference. The cat's out of the bag now
yeah,
because I just told everybody. But I mean, it's not real stuff for me, and I'm okay with that. But I am hearing from more and more
cat's out of
people
the
about.
bag, Ivan.
I know.
Cat's
I
out
mean,
of the bag.
but having those physical buttons, in fact, I have a device called SoftTube, and it's a controller. It's
Mhm.
just basically knobs and
I've seen those things. Do you like it?
I love it. I love it. And
Do
it's,
you?
yeah, because what I can do is I can put my hands, on the knobs and kind of close my eyes. And I'm really guilty of mixing by what I see. So I'm looking at
Right.
the meters, I'm looking at the waveforms, I'm looking
Mhm.
at what the number for the EQs are, and as opposed to, what am I hearing? And I have found that um, I'm more listening than I am looking, and
Right.
that's been very helpful because
And
and
with that thing, you're probably doing things that you wouldn't normally do if you were looking at a screen.
right. And when I first
Yeah.
started in this business, and you and I kind of spoke about this yesterday about working in a studio. Um, I I was it was 4-track cassette, or analog. My first real studio experience was a 1-inch 16 track machine, and then 2-inch 24 track. And then we did some stuff on ADATs, but even on the ADAT stuff, you know, it was a big analog board and there was no automation. And it was, I remember being in there with, you know, different bands and things, and the engineer saying, okay, well, you know, you hit this mute and then
You stand on
unmute
that fader.
and you ride the fader and you ride this vocal,
Yeah.
and we'd mark it off
Brian,
with
you,
tape.
you go stand at this fader.
Yeah.
Rob, you stand at this fader.
Yeah. And
You
we
hit
did it.
solo. Yeah,
And
we used
it-
to do shit like that.
And it was choreographed, you know, it was choreographed, and you had to kind of
Yeah.
do it. If you screwed it up, you had to rewind it and start again. And Ivan, you missed your mute, that kind of thing. But in my mind, I'm still that guy. I'm still that analog guy in a digital world. But I think that means less and less these days. I use Cubase. I think you said you use Cubase, and I love it. I love it. You know,
Yeah.
it's good. Dee, this has been awesome. I do appreciate you doing this. I am gonna say goodnight. I hope we get to do this again.
Oh, I hope so too.
Is there any?
So I was talking to the guys. I was kind of hoping, you know, we've got some things in the works. Me and Chris and Annie and Jason. We were kind of hoping we could if there's any way to work it out that we could all come back on. I haven't talked to Chris about it. But
No, that would be awesome. I would love to apologize to Jason for spitting beer in his face, but you know that was.
Oh, he does it. I can tell you right now, he's not going to care.
Oh,
if he heard this, he's probably laughing his ass off right now.
No, I would definitely love to have you guys on all at
Yeah.
the time, and that would be awesome. And in
Yeah,
fact,
we're working on something that it'd be great if we could come back on.
there's another thing I'll run by you that I'd like to do. I was talking to Rob about this actually. There's some stuff about to come out. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but it's collaboration software where you do loop-based music. But apparently you write a piece, it's a DAW plugin, you do a bit, it uploads it. Within like 2 or 3 seconds, you have access to it. So you can't play synchronously, but I could write a part, and within seconds you could add to that, and it updates as you go.
Oh, let's do it.
And
Can we do that?
I think what would be neat would be to record, like do a show of a song from scratch, just to come in and say,
"Oh, dude, let's do it."
That would be awesome.
I'd totally be into doing that.
And then release it, and then we can all quit these other jobs, and
we can quit our jobs and make a bunch of money on Bandcamp. Because that's what all the kids do. That's what the cool kids do.
Is that what they do? I have no idea.
Yeah, man.
What they do,
I don't know what they do.
But anyway, man, this has been a blast, and it's been good talking to you. And I'm gonna go ahead and say goodnight though, and we'll keep in touch, and we will definitely make some stuff happen. And is there any?
Thanks for doing this, Ivan.
Oh,
thanks,
yeah.
Thanks for thinking of me, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, and for the
For
people
all
that
of you out there, go check out Comb. Check out Nihilism is Real. It's on dmadden.com. It's on Bandcamp. All the streamers. Comb will be on the streamers in about 2 or 3 weeks. But it's available on Bandcamp now. Check it out.
So the easiest way would just be Google Dee Madden at .com, dmadden.com, and that's all there.
Go to dmadden.com.
Perfect. All right. Well then, Dee, I'm going to say goodnight. I will talk to you later, and thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, you bet. Love you, buddy.
I love you too, man. Late. Wow. That was awesome. Dee still doing it, still killing it, and I appreciate him coming on and being so honest and candid about a bunch of stuff. A bunch of messages in tonight's thing. One, that whole creative process. It can reflect what you're doing. It can, again, you can find some comfort in creative endeavors, whether it's you being creative or supporting other people in their creative endeavors. Maybe they hit a note. Maybe they do something that reflects what you're going through, what you've been through, and to find some of that common ground and help yourself kind of move on to other things, and to look back in the past at some of the creative stuff that's been done and understand that maybe that reflected a different time in somebody's life, and I think that's awesome. And the other message would be, again, and I'm just going to keep hammering this in, is just that please, if there's any desire to get out there to do something, just do it. Don't put up a barrier in front of yourself about, I'm too old, or I don't have the money, or I don't have the time. Because time will run out. It's not your friend by any stretch. And now is the time to do stuff. I also love the fact that Dee has done these things with his family and his friends, and he shares that with his kids. And I think that's important too. It's just a great way to bring important people even closer. It doesn't have to be family. It can be friends. It can be other people. But when you do these things to talk about, to make something together, or to work on something together, I think that's awesome. He's going to be able to look back at those videos he did with his son, and that's something they're going to be able to share, pretty much forever. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, and if you're watching the recording, thanks for watching the recording. DeeMadden.com, DeeMadden.com. Start there. You can also Google Penal Colony on YouTube. And there's a bunch of good content there. You can look at some of the Cleopatra Records catalog, and I believe a lot of that is available either on Spotify or iTunes and other places too. But some really, really good music that Dee was a big part of, as were a lot of his other bandmates. So I'm going to say goodnight too. Thanks for tuning in. And what I'm going to do, I think, is play a little bit of a song. And just kind of let it ride out here. I'm going to kind of let, where are we at? I'm going to keep playing this piece, this live performance. I'm going to let that play for a little bit, and then say goodnight.
He's in